welcome to the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast, the best place in the entire world, including all of Canada, to learn how to build new thoughts, new actions, and new results. I'm your host, Jon Acuff, and today I'm joined by Ellie and McCrae Acuff. Who's that? I feel like that one's pretty obvious. Of all the guests I have, Ellie and McCrae Acuff, it's my daughters. I have two daughters, and they actually have official bios because we just released a new book. It comes out tomorrow, actually, officially, but we have a book and they have bios. I'll read you their bios right now because they're amazing and they actually have bios. Ellie Acuff is a freshman business major at Stanford University in Birmingham, Alabama. In addition to writing books, she loves skimboarding, frisbee, and skiing. When she's not behind a laptop, she's creating clothing at her sewing machine or music at her piano. That's a really fun bio. McCrae Acuff is a high school junior in Franklin, Tennessee. She runs cross country and track, loves student government, and is somewhere babysitting right now. She's a writer at heart and will probably write the follow-up to your new playlist all by herself. So Ellie and I and McCrae, we all wrote a book. It's essentially soundtracks for teenagers because if you want to really learn how to build a winning mindset, it's an amazing tool to start working on when you're a teenager. And so we wrote a book about that. It's called Your New Playlist. Comes out tomorrow. And we sat down for a very funny interview that involved an interrupting bird. Like at one point during the interview, a bird interrupts. Then Ellie and McCrae get real wiggly right in kind of the middle. We joke they haven't had any media training. So it's imagine recording a podcast with your teenagers or with your students. And then kind of at the end when I try to wrap up, they also interrupt that. So it goes all over the place. It's a really fun conversation. If you're a parent and you've got a kid, whether they're 4 years old or 14 years old or 24 years old, I think you're going to love this episode. But first, a quick word from the sponsor of today's episode. When my book soundtracks came out, one reaction really surprised me. Parents across the country started asking me, do you have a version for teenagers? They say, Jon, if I could have changed my mindset at that age, my entire life would have been different. Why did they say that? Because when it comes to the life you want, mindset is everything. When you're young, your entire world is made of new. You're a movie that's barely started, a notebook with blank pages in it, a song that hasn't hit the chorus yet. You have your whole life ahead of you. The crazy thing is, your future life is directly impacted by your mindset. Positive or negative, your thoughts matter. They can work for you or against you. In fact, a single repetitive thought believed when you're a teen can change the course of your entire life. The good news is you get a choice when it comes to those internal soundtracks. That's why I wrote my newest book, Your New Playlist, with my two teenage daughters. It's written for teenagers, by teenagers, to help them create new thoughts that will turn into new actions and lead to new results. Help your teen design a playlist and tap into the superpower mindset by pre-ordering a copy of Your New Playlist wherever you like to buy books. Or you can even read the first 2 chapters for free at acuff.me/playlist. All right, this is going to be super fun. I'm excited to have both you guys on the podcast. We know each other pretty well, I would say. Pretty familiar with each other. It's Ellie and McCrae, my two daughters. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thanks for having me. Yes, very excited.
Yeah, and this is a big day because tomorrow, your first book that you've ever written, Your New Playlist, I have a real copy here. We got these just the other day, comes out on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, everywhere books are sold. Are you guys feeling excited about the book launch?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to jump right into why we wrote this book to begin with, because there's a lot of parents listening that are probably going to say, okay, well, who's the book for? What's it about? How do I connect with it? And what I've been telling people is that the book started when my book, Soundtracks, came out. And parents started to come up and say, hey, you wrote a book called Soundtracks about mindset. Do you have a version for teenagers? Why do you guys feel like a version for teenagers is helpful? Why don't you jump in first, Ellie?
Okay. Well, you've always kind of said in all the podcasts we've done, one of the things you say is there's not a class at school on mindset. Like you learn about physical activity, about math, about science, but there's never a how to equip your mind for grown-up world class. Like there's not a mindset type of class. So what taking your book Soundtracks and turning it into a teen version does is that it equips the younger generation to really, have this tool and take it and can really make change in their life that can positively impact them.
That's a great answer, and it's something we definitely worked on as a family. I think one of the questions we've had, because you're right, we've done a handful of podcasts, and one of the questions we've had are, what are some soundtracks that our family lives by? Which is a great question, because essentially what people are saying is like, is this just something you put in a book, or is this something your family actually uses? How do you talk to teenagers about it? Cray, what would you say is one of our family soundtracks?
I would say one of our family soundtracks is like Early is on Time. Like we show up early everywhere. Like I remember when we were recording our audiobook, we got there like 15 minutes early and had to wait in the parking lot before going in.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. Another one is We Don't Show Up Hungry, which is silly, but for us, it's a micro soundtrack for a macro principle. And what it means is when we go on a road trip and we're staying at somebody's house, we don't show up expecting them to have made us dinner. We'll stop an hour before, eat somewhere. And what we're trying to establish for us as a family is, okay, we think about others. We're grateful about others, but that's one of ours is like, you don't show up early, or you don't show up hungry. You don't show up hungry. You don't come in a hot mess and be like, okay, we're staying here, but we'd also like you to really feed us dinner as well. I think another one that we've talked about is like, don't be a middle camper. Ellie,
yes.
That's a soundtrack in our family, don't be a middle camper. What does that mean?
Okay, so we have a saying that middle campers, there's always a loop at a campsite, and there's the middle where there's no trees, it's where the bathroom is, and we always say that the campers that camp there show up at like 8 p.m. with like 8 screaming kids and then like a TV. And so we just really will be like, oh, we'll recognize something and be like, oh, that's a middle camper behavior. We shouldn't do that.
And so the point we always talk about is if you plan ahead. So the outside loop is usually it's on the lake. It's got a view, like with a little bit of detail, with a little bit of planning, you get to really experience a lot of fun things in life. When you're last second, when you're not detailed, you're essentially camping in the equivalent of a parking lot. So we talk a lot about, okay, what is what's good camping behavior? What's middle camping? Like, how do we not be middle campers? So McCrae, what would you say is the best part of being a teenager these days? Like 2022, what's the best part, or what are some fun parts?
I think it's really fun with like all the technology there's now. There's like so much to learn. Like you can learn about so many different like jobs you could pursue, and like when you were a kid you couldn't like learn a language on an app, but like technology opens so many doors for teenagers.
Well, and just knowing that's a career. I mean, I think we talk about that as a family. Your mom brought that up just the other day, that with YouTube, you're exposed to all these different careers. One of Mom's favorite follows on Instagram is a farmer that she loves, named Ruth Ann in Iowa, and it's about homesteading and how do you preserve blueberries and all this. You're right. There's this rich education that I think you have as a teenager that you used to not have, which is really fun. So I think that's a really good point. Ellie, one of the soundtracks we talk about is Enough is a Myth. That's in the book. I can totally hear you guys writing each other notes. I don't know what you guys are saying to each other, but that.
McCrae keeps wiggling.
No, I'm not. You can't hear it.
She is.
Yeah, Cray, I see you. I definitely see you wiggling. We're 100% leaving this in. We're working on good podcast behavior.
I'm trying to
You
be
can't hear
quiet.
me.
You're
You're over here scribbling away.
You're
What
like,
did you write down?
I said,
Don't wiggle.
I said, stop moving. They can hear that. McCrae's like fidgeting over here.
Well, Cray and I are both very wiggly, I would say.
Like that. You can
but-
hear that.
But what's interesting is that we've had a lot of people on podcasts ask us questions that are essentially like, it must be amazing to have a dad who shares soundtracks at the table, and your family must go on long walks and read books together. And like, there's this perception that if you've written a book for teenagers, that you've got perfect teenagers. So I actually like that you guys both just got in an argument in the middle of the podcast, because that's real life. But Ellie, before you guys had kind of a passive aggressive conversation in the middle of the podcast, which was helpful. I think it's going to move a lot of units.
Makes it more real.
Authentic.
Down to
People
earth.
like authentic. People like authentic. Ellie, I was asking you, one of the soundtracks that you guys wrote about in the book, your new playlist, is Enough is a Myth. What do you mean by enough is a myth?
Well, you've always talked about how a really common thing you hear among teenagers is saying, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough. And that word enough is bad because there's not like an end goal. You can't say, oh, I'm not cool enough. If I get invited to this party, then I'm going to be enough. You get to the party, you leave, and suddenly there's a next party the next week, and it's like, oh, but this time it'll be enough. And it's never enough. So having that word enough in your soundtrack is one sign that it's broken because you're chasing something that's unachievable.
That doesn't exist. And then if you practice that when you're a teenager, you end up doing it as an adult. Because on my end, as I work with 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, there's people that'll say, well, once I get to this financial goal, that'll be enough. And then they get there and they realize, this other one would be a little better. And you just keep moving it. And I think that's really challenging. So part of our hope with this book is that it gives you a chance to learn some new tools that you'll use for the rest of your life. Because in my job, when I work with a leader, say that's 45 or 35, and their company is asking them to step into leadership, often they go, well, I'm not a real leader, I'm not a natural leader. And it's because somebody told them in high school or somebody told them in college, you're not a natural leader, and they listen to that soundtrack again and again and again and again. So what if you could learn great soundtracks as teenagers? What could that do for the rest of your life? Now, we joked about authenticity, you guys getting into an argument in the middle of the podcast recording. And it's good that we're doing this now because we, like, on Annie Downs' podcast, we got to be in the zone. We got to dial it in. That's a big podcast. But McCrae, the thing I loved about the authenticity of this book was the very first chapter. So the very first chapter starts with something that was challenging for you. It was your suggestion. Can you tell that story a little bit?
So I had played lacrosse all through middle school and like my first year of high school. And then I got cut via text message during my sophomore year. And I thought it was like a really good start to the book because like as soon as I read that text, there's like a million like negative soundtracks like flood in my head about like what had just happened. And it took me a while to like get over it, but also like replace those negative soundtracks with positive ones. And so I thought that would be a good way to start out the book.
Well, and I was so proud of you for being so brave because what happened was you came to me and said, hey, I think we should put this in the book because other students are going to get cut from things. Like you're not going to get into the sorority you want or the fraternity you want. You're not going to make the soccer team. There might be a scholarship you don't get. Like when you're trying things, that often happens. Like when you risk, when you dare, there's often challenges. And so I love that you're willing to share that. And we asked the coach, I emailed the coach and said, hey, this is kind of random, but I write books for a living, which is a strange living. But do you mind if we put this story in? And he was so gracious. And he said, I would be honored if you put the story in. I'd love to have copies of the book. So I think there's a lot of teenagers that's going to encourage and inspire. So I was so grateful you put that in the book. One of the things we talk about a lot in the book are symbols. So how do you find something that's true, helpful, and kind? Because those are the three questions, and we'll talk about those questions in a minute. But how do you attach a good soundtrack to a symbol? Ellie, I'd love to hear first from you, like what's one of the symbols you use? And then McCrae, what's one of your symbols?
Okay, one symbol that I use that I love, and I talk about it in the book, I think, but it's my photo wall. In my room, there's one wall that is completely covered floor to ceiling with pictures. And I've had it for a couple years now, and I love just sitting down, ordering pictures, kind of changing it out. And what's nice about it is that it's the wall that I see first when I wake up in the morning. And so even though I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see anything, I know that it's there, and I know that it's all these people and experiences that really mean a lot to me. So I like having this journal on the wall, photo journal on the wall about, some of my favorite moments in life.
What would you say? You're about to go to college, or actually when this comes out, you'll already be in college. I'm going to try not to cry on this podcast. It'd be so awkward.
It would.
It would be awkward. It would be awkward. But what would you say are one of the symbols you'll have at college that you're bringing with you that you go, oh, this is going to remind me of, or this is something that matters to me?
Well, one thing, it's kind of like a mini version of the photo wall, is that I have a clear phone case. And so every so often I'll go through and I tape down pictures on the back of the phone case so I can see them on the back of my phone. So without being like on my phone, even when my phone's just sitting there, I'm like, oh, these are like a little portable photo wall, you know? So that's because obviously my photo wall is staying here. I can't take my wall to college, but the little mini one is something that I'm taking.
How about you, McCrae? What's a symbol of a soundtrack that's been helpful to you?
We also talk about this one in the book, but I really enjoyed the soundtrack of my trunk because when I was going into 8th grade, I went to this summer camp for 2 weeks before, and I didn't know anyone. I'd never been there before. And so it was a symbol of like me being brave enough to try new things. And so every time I see it sitting in my room, I'm reminded of like how glad I am that I was brave because I made so many new friends and had such a fun time. And it's just like something I really enjoy.
Yeah, and that's, that ties into one of the things we talk about, which is be brave enough to be bad at something new. That's a soundtrack we talk about a lot. And the challenge is the age you both are. Great, you're yawning so many times. And I don't know what's worse, the yawn or you trying to hide the yawn?
And the creaky chair.
No, it's fine. I just keep seeing her yawn. Ross, don't edit any of this out. This is real life. But you guys are doing so many new things constantly. And one of the things that's in the back of the book is I wrote about 6 things parents never tell you. And one of them is we ask you to be really brave. You guys have heard me say that before. We essentially, when you're 6, we'll say, hey, by the way, I signed you up for soccer. Here's a sport. We drop you off at a field and we say, those 20 kids out there wearing shoes you've never worn before in your life with a soccer, uniform. And that coach is now your coach. Go on, get out there. And we ask you to be really brave. And then the joke I've done with you guys before is that when your mom asks me to go to a dinner party, I do like 1,000 questions. I'm like, who's going to be there? How long are we staying?
Is there a dog for you to pet?
Is there a dog for me to pet? Like, do they have a cool dog? Like, or is it going to be some cat that's behind the washing machine that I won't even get to see because they're like, oh, he's skittish. And then I can't distract myself with the cat. So we asked you guys to be really brave at a lot of new things. And so I think it's important for us as parents to realize, oh, wow, we are encouraging our kids to be brave. How can we encourage them to be brave at something, be bad enough to be brave at something they've never done? Like college for you, Ellie. You said to me before, you're going in with certain expectations. What are your expectations for the first semester?
Well, what I've been thinking about is that what's comforting is that no one has done college before. Like as a college freshman, we're all 17, 18, 19. Like everyone's going to be bad at college. There's going to be times when I'm like, I feel like everyone else is out hanging, on the weekends and I'll be in my dorm. But, everything is new and everyone is going to be bad at it at first. So I think this first semester I'm trying to go in with low expectations and the thought that I'm not alone in my thoughts. Like this is new for everybody else.
Everybody's in the exact same place, which I think is a helpful thought, whether you're joining high school as a freshman or you're joining college as a freshman, that everybody's new at this. One of the things that we talked about in the book, and we talk about a lot in our house, are what we call turn down techniques. So a turn down technique came from a conversation we had with David Thomas here in Nashville, who said, life isn't a switch, it's a dial. Sometimes people think I got to find the perfect thing that'll switch off this negative feeling or switch off this stress or switch off this frustration. And so they try yoga for a week and it works okay, but then they get stressful again. They think, oh, yoga wasn't it. And say, try something else, try something else, try something else. But really it's about when their dial gets loud, like when your dial gets turned up to a 10 because life is stressful, you have things you do to turn it down. Ellie, what's one of your turn down techniques? Or actually, you know what? Let's jump with Craig. Craig, what's one of your turn down techniques?
I really enjoy listening to music. That's definitely one. I enjoy baking, reading. It's just, I have a bunch and you just have to figure out what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're very personal. I would say another one of yours is running. We talk about how, if there's a stressed out moment, a couple miles around the neighborhood can be really helpful. But again, a big part of it is knowing those ahead of time so that as high school gets stressful, as college gets stressful, you're able to bust those out. Ellie, what's one of yours? Like, what's a turn down technique for you?
I also have a couple like McCrae, but a big one for me is playing the piano because, most people like play the piano to play it for others, but I have an electric keyboard and I plug the headphones in and it's only for me. No one else hears it. So I'll go and I'll sit and I'll bang on my keys and it sounds like just like a keyboard typing to everyone else in the house, but I enjoy making music on my piano. That's probably my
I've
best.
heard you play piano like twice in the
10 years, never done a recital.
10 years.
No.
10 years, never done a recital. And I think that's important to know. So like to think about the turn down technique is for you. It's not for other people. It doesn't have to be a performance. It's going to be different for other people. I mean, we talk in our family that like I love doing Lego sets, like big Lego, like I do.
Like a nerd.
Oh, wow. Like, great. You mean like a cool dad that owns Jordans
and wears New
They're
Balances.
only cool because mom only lets you get cars.
No Star Wars.
No
for you.
Star Wars.
Yeah,
It's a
that's a
slippery
soundtrack
slope.
in our house. Yeah, I always say like, let me get vehicles, and she's like, no, because a Star Cruiser is a vehicle, so it has to be earthbound cars. But that for me, that's one of them, and so I think you have to remember that. Okay, the things I do that turn the dial down for me are personal to me. But I want to jump back to the 3 questions we teach parents and students to ask their broken soundtracks. So the first question is it true? Is what I'm telling myself about myself true? The second question is it helpful? When I say it again and again and again, is it helpful? And McCrae, you actually have an example of that around a test grade. Can you share that story about is it helpful?
My freshman year, I was taking a biology course, and the teacher was super challenging. And I got a 42 on one of the tests with the curve. And so what my brain was telling me to do as I'm studying for the next one is like, oh, you got a 42 on the last test. You're not going to do good on this one. And a bunch of unhelpful soundtracks. And so, like, I had to turn this around and be like, is it helpful? And be like, no, like, thinking about my previous test score isn't helpful. So you have to like figure out what encourages you while you're studying for the next test.
Yeah, so it was true. Like you did get a 42. Like that was a fact. But saying that to yourself the night before the next test wasn't helpful. Ellie, go shut the door because we can 100% hear. Yeah, your bird is so loud right now. Which again, this is a very real podcast. So Ellie has a lovebird. And I'm about to have a lovebird because when she goes to college, there's a free bonus
Shut my
tip
door,
for this
Ellie,
episode.
too.
Yeah, shut
You can
both
still
doors.
hear.
That bird is so loud.
She heard me talking. She got excited.
She loves you.
Yeah, so just a bonus tip to parents: don't buy your child like an exotic bird.
They
as a
live
pet, 'cause
forever.
They live. So this bird is gonna live to 20. So we've only owned it 4 years. So for the next 4 years when she's at college, it's my bird. And then as soon as she because like
As soon as there's an apartment, it's coming.
That bird is
unfortunately,
going
coming
back.
to
You get a
That bird
diploma
is-
and a bird.
Yeah, diploma and a bird. So like, yeah, that was such a fun. And I didn't think you try to go through a checklist for podcasts, and very rarely do I have to ask the guests to keep their tropical bird quiet. But this is here we
She
are.
wants
But
to be a
yes,
part of the conversation.
she hears Ellie and then is like, "Are we shouting? Let's all shout together."
It's still here.
So McCrae, it was true. The 42 was true, but it wasn't helpful to say that again and again and again. And where we reminded each other, Craig, scoot in so we can see your whole face.
You can see my whole face on our screen.
Yeah, we have it on landscape mode,
Yeah.
so you can
You
see all
guys
of
got to
us.
scoot in. There you go. Don't do that. But McCrae, that wasn't helpful. And what we related it to is if a friend, say you had a friend at school that texted you 100 times the night before, you got a 42 last time, you'll get another 42. You got a 42 last time, you get another 42. That wouldn't be something that helped you. Like you would think that friend is a maniac. So why, if a friend wouldn't do it to you, why would you do it to yourself? I think is really important. And I love the turn down technique. Craig, one of your symbols is on your nightstand, and it's one that you love flipping over. Can you share that symbol for you?
I have a symbol. It's an hourglass, and I really love it because it's such a tangible soundtrack. And for me, it's like soundtracked. You said it wrong. Okay, anyway, it's very, like, it reminds me, like, even if I've had a bad day, like, the next day I get to, like, flip the glass over and, like, have a fresh start every morning, so.
Yeah, it's one that it's super small, but it's super easy. Ellie, we did an event together recently, you and I, in Chicago, and there were about 200 teenagers. It was really fun. It was international, like, streamed internationally, and we spoke for like 20 minutes or so, and then we took Q&A from the crowd. And this 14-year-old boy in the back raised his hand, and we thought, okay, here's the first question. And he said, I don't have a question, I have a statement. And we both thought he was going to be like, my dad always told me growing up, you got to believe in yourself and go for it. Ellie, what was his statement?
He said to you, you're creasing your J's, which I then had to translate to
I didn't know what he meant.
My father, because he meant he was creasing his shoes. My dad had his shoes tucked up on the stool and was bending the toe, which is a sin in the sneaker community. So he was creasing his Jordans, and that's all this kid could think about that entire time.
And the entire audience started laughing, and it was hilarious. And I talked to his leader after, and he said, yeah, when you took the stage, my kids were all like, oh, man, look at those Jordans. That's great. But then when I bent them, they couldn't hear a single word I said.
You showed your hand. You showed that you didn't know anything about shoes.
I don't know about anything. I mean, a little bit.
We bought them for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true at Christmas. So I'm trying to think, if I'm a parent and I'm listening to this, how would you encourage your student, your kid to read this book? If you said as a parent, wow, I want my kid to have a winning mindset. I could see that it can be really stressful. It can be really loud. Social media is really loud. The pressure of high school is really loud. The pressure of college is really loud. How would you encourage a parent to help their kid read this book?
In the book, we talk about incentivizing them, sliding a $20 bill or whatever amount in the back of the book and saying, if you read this book, get $20. Because even if you read it and even if you just read it, like, that's helpful information that could possibly stick around with you for the rest of your life. Do you have anything, Curate?
Pretty much what you said. You stole what I was going to say again.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, I think it's great for parents to read it first. I think have a read through yourself. I think it'll teach you some questions to ask. I think it'll open you up to a lot of things that you might not know that your teenagers are experiencing. I mean, one of the things I really didn't understand how Snapchat worked, that you could geotag, like you would see your friends at places you weren't. Like that, that's a lot of pressure to see that, okay, I can see everybody's icon at a party I'm not invited to. I can't imagine that, growing up with that kind of pressure, that kind of social challenge. What would you say to parents, if parents said to you, hey, how do I encourage my teenager? McCrae, how would you suggest parents encourage your teenager?
Let me think. I would say just be like, not like super like on top of them about like, how are you doing, because that's super intense, intimidating, and just be like kind and be like, ask them about their day and like encourage them, like if they feel like left out, like we've all been left out at some point. And if it's not going to matter in like 5 years, there's no reason to worry about it now because it happens to all of us, and just be like encouraging.
Well, I have something about how I connect with my parents. I mean, this is coming from the teen, so I don't know how the parents can connect with their teen. But as a teen, I love to find funny videos either on Instagram or TikTok and show them to my parents. It's always a good connection to let them know what's going on in my side of the internet.
The world of youths.
With youths, because my dad is an avid Instagram Reels user, so he will see my videos just a couple 5 to 10 business days after they are popular.
5 to 10 business years.
It's on TikTok first, and then 5 to 10 business days later,
it'll show up on like Barstool or something, and you'll see it, and I'll be like, "Oh, I saw that like a while ago."
That is so funny. That is so funny. To that point, and I think you're right. I think And you also make me a meme guide. For the last couple
true.
years, you've made a meme guide for Christmas and been like, hey, here's the memes you don't know about that you maybe don't understand. Like I remember one during COVID was the earth is healing itself. It was like, because if there wasn't, like nobody was traveling. So then people started doing like rainbow dolphins jumping in the air.
That was funny.
And it was the earth is healing itself. But I'm curious, what would you say your mom and I do, like get right with parenting? What could we do better?
McCrae's poking me to answer this question because I don't think
Craig,
she
you don't
knows what
wanna
to
answer?
say.
I don't know what to say.
Well, like, is it okay? Sometimes we're too strict and we put too many conditions on you guys. Is it, you know, it's hard to grow up with a father who's so hilarious
and so
like
short.
Oh.
Short king.
Cray, yeah, short king. See, that's a meme. I didn't know that was a.
It's not a meme.
Short king summer.
Short King Spring.
Oh right, yeah.
Short king spring is. Yeah, that is. But McCrae is taller than me. But I mean, is there anything that you'd go, oh, like this would be helpful?
I have something.
Yeah, let's hear it.
You guys didn't let me get social media until I think I was 13. I think it was that 13-year-old Christmas when you wrapped it up and gave it to me. So at the time, I was like, this is silly. Like, I want to get all the social media. But now looking back at it, like, and McCrae and I are different. Like, we have different social medias. I have TikTok and she has Snapchat. But I'm glad that you did it the way that you did. Because for me personally, I don't think Snapchat would be that helpful. So you didn't let me have it. But now I'm like, at this point, I'm fine with not having it. So I think social media, as I'm older, it makes more sense why you guys put the limitations that you do.
Or like waiting till you're 12 to get a phone, because like nowadays there's like 10-year-olds who have a phone, and I feel like that like kind of steals their childhood a little bit, because like you just need to be like a kid and just like play outside and not be like texting your friends. I don't know.
Yeah, so we waited till 12 for phone, and I was like, we're gonna wait till 16, but that was just naive,
unrealistic.
Unrealistic and dumb. And then so I mean, now that you're 19, Ellie, and you don't use Snapchat, and it's not because we said you can't. I mean, you're going to college, so it's not like I can be like, hey, you're at college, make sure you're not using Snapchat. But McCrae, we worked on that over time, like you feeling like, okay, I'm like, I want to use Snapchat, my friends use Snapchat, because I think that's something parents don't understand, is that if everybody's communicating via Snapchat or via Instagram DMs in high school, they're not calling on the phone. Like, rarely do I see one of your friends call you on the phone and you have a phone call together. And even text messaging, a lot of your text messages are via DMs, like you're Instagramming each other. And I would say, as a parent who's got a child going to college, a lot of college is about Instagram. About finding roommates on Instagram, connecting with other people on Instagram in your major, connecting with your school via Instagram. So I think that if you're a young parent and you're like, oh man, I want to keep my kid off of Instagram until they're like 35, because that was kind of my attitude. I think it was helpful for us to go, oh no, it's a pretty big world out there. And there's a lot of fun parts to it, and it's super necessary for you guys to be focused on it. The last one I want to talk about, there's a soundtrack in the book, and it's soundtrack number 6, and it's people in the game always get criticized by people in the stands. I thought that was a really interesting one. You jump in, Ellie, I see you tapping yourself. Does that maybe giving Cray a symbol like, I got this?
Okay, well, typically you're not looking at the video. So when McCrae and I are sitting next to each other, we give each other little cues.
Little cues, little points, per se.
Yeah. Every time we've done one of these, they've written notes to each other constantly. When we've done some podcasts together, Cray, what are you doing? Why are you so close to the camera?
I'm not that close to the camera.
She's leaning.
Dave had no media training. We're going to have to send you to some sort of like media Girl Scout camp where you guys learn how to look at cameras. Ellie, what were you going to say?
Wait, what was the question? What was the question again?
People in the game always get criticized by people in the stand.
I thought about this one time when we were doing a podcast, but one time this guy, I was doing something like challenging some people to get to a higher spot in the class, in band class, and he was like, Ellie, you're such...
Because you compete.
There's
a list of like first chair to 10th chair. You're trying to get higher ranking in the chairs, which means you're better and better and better.
So I was competing against this guy who was a chair ahead of me, and he was like, Ellie, you're such a try-hard for doing all this. And I was like, I went home and I told my parents, and we kind of laughed about it. And we were like, I guess I am a try-hard. Like, I could have sat on that and been like, oh, I'm a try-hard. I just won't try then. But I am a try-hard, and I think I went from like 10th chair, I was 10th chair, to 5th.
And then COVID happened, so, right? So you couldn't cheer out more?
Well, yes. But anyways, that people in the game get criticized by people in the stands. Like, I wouldn't have gotten criticized by him. I didn't take it as a criticism, but if I had just sat there and just accepted my spot.
He meant it as a criticism.
Oh,
we
he
just
did.
Flipped it.
He
we
did
the judo.
But I took it.
Like,
I was like,
yeah.
I guess I am a tryhard.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me that.
Let's go. That's become one of our soundtracks is that we're tryhards. Like, let's go. Like, we're going to, but you're 100% right. If you hadn't tried to challenge and get to a better chair, he never would have commented.
No.
But it was when you, and he ended up forfeiting. Like he
forfeited.
Like,
he just gave up his spot to me.
I gave his spot. So we're always like, all right, try. Let's see what it takes to try. And that's one of our soundtracks as a family is like, we'll go, hey, let's give it a year or let's give it 6 months. Like an activity, like there's no, you try it. Like, and that's true of all of us. Cause you guys call me out on, because you've heard so much of my content so often, you'll say like, if I come up with some crazy goal, like you guys will go like, hey, I think maybe we should cut that goal in half, which is an idea from a book I wrote called Finish. And you guys will quote that back because that's what we
talk about at the dinner table. How you're not doing your book's advice.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. So like I have to live an authentic life based on like, I can't put it in a book and then not actually live it. And I'll never forget, Ellie, one thing you said to me once was, Dad, you're either OCD or no CD. That was something you said to me. And you meant I was either really detailed or not. I had two speeds.
Two speeds, all or nothing.
All or nothing. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting that my daughter sees that. And what do I want to do with that? And I think that's my hope of this book. My hope is that parents will read it first. It'll give them some questions to ask their kids. Kids will read it and it'll give them some encouragement for the high school years, early college years. I think a lot of, like 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders will read the book and find some tools that'll help change their mindset for the rest of their life. That's the real fun thing, is that the way you think can shape the rest of your whole life. And we hope that you're able to plug into that. Ellie McCrae, what are you guys laughing at?
I don't know. McCrae made a funny face in the... Sorry. Keep going. Keep doing your wrap up.
So that was the wrap up. That was 100% the wrap up. Oh my gosh. You guys are both almost grounded after this episode. There was a bird, a lot of wiggling.
Yeah,
The wrap up was kind of, I don't want to say
out.
Ruined, but interrupted. At least it was definitely interrupted.
McCrae made a funny face and it made me laugh.
Oh. You guys are hilarious. Okay, so the book is out tomorrow. It's called Your New Playlist. You can get it anywhere. Last thing, your names are on the cover, and the first cover. How did the first cover?
8.
They were like this
8 font.
No, they're like 0.8 font.
It was
the
tiny.
font was so small.
It's
The
like-
first cover design, and I didn't design the cover, but the first cover design was like Jon Acuff, and then it was like,
With Ellie McCrae.
it was a whisper. It was a whisper.
me.
And these two divas were like, we demand, like Beyonce over here, we demand bigger fonts. Like you gotta, and we did. So the font feels pretty good. Got Ellie and McCrae on there. I'm gonna read your bios during the intro, so that'll be good. But girls, thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you downstairs in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right. Thank you for listening to my interview with Ellie and McCrae Acuff today. We'll put all the links in the show notes as always, and make sure you grab a copy of Your New Playlist. It comes out tomorrow. It's for sale everywhere. You can read the first 2 chapters for free at acuff.me/playlist, acuff.me/playlist. And please keep those reviews coming. I love the reviews you write of this podcast. They're super encouraging. They're super helpful. And I am so grateful that you take the 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. Sometimes you guys write long, really amazing reviews that probably took 5 minutes. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I really, really appreciate it. Please make sure you follow or subscribe, or whatever it is the kids are saying these days, and please write a review. I'll see you next week, and remember, all it takes is a goal. And don't forget, you can pre-order a copy of your new playlist anywhere books are sold, or you could read the first 2 chapters for free at acuff.me/playlist. That's acuff.me/playlist.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast and to get access to today's show notes and exclusive content from Jon Acuff, visit acuff.me/podcast. Thanks again for joining us. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast.